Good morning. Yesterday afternoon at approximately 2:35 p.m., outside of a Motel 6 in Gallup, New Mexico, Marlon Kellywood was taken into custody by special agents from the New Mexico Department of Justice and charged with two counts. Count one, child solicitation by electronic communication device, and count two, attempted criminal sexual penetration of a minor. Mr. Kellywood's apprehension was the culmination of a months-long targeted investigation initiated by this office in coordination with local law enforcement partners, focusing exclusively on the ability of pedophiles and sexual predators to utilize social media platforms under the Meta banner, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, to hunt, groom, target, and potentially victimize minor children. As we will detail for you today, it was, frankly, thanks to the dedicated effort of our special agents and the work that they did in an undercover capacity that identified these three individuals and led to their apprehension. But one of the things that I want to make abundantly clear at the outset is that this operation was focused on proving one specific point, and that is that the danger presented by Meta and its social media platforms doesn't just exist in the virtual world, it actually endangers children in the real world. And that is something that I think all of us need to be especially mindful of today. As you can see from the slide presented here, Mr. Kellywood was not the only individual taken into custody. About 30 or 40 minutes before he was apprehended, we actually took into custody another individual by the name of Fernando Clyde. He was 52 years old. He actually began a conversation with our undercover agent back in February of this year and has been in constant communication with someone who he believed to be a 12-year-old girl. I won't detail for you today all of the extraordinarily graphic material that was sent by Mr. Clyde and the other defendants who have been identified in this operation. But suffice it to say, it is truly horrifying. They communicated and exchanged explicit sexual content and explicit sexual material through the Messenger application on Facebook. And they also solicited quite clearly and expressed quite clearly a sexual interest in children. Mr. Clyde, like Mr. Kellywood, has also been charged with one count of child solicitation by electronic communication device and attempted criminal sexual penetration of a minor. As I detailed before, Mr. Kellywood faces similar charges for his conduct. And interestingly, the engagement that Mr. Kellywood exhibited actually began back in December, shortly after this office initiated a first-of-its-kind lawsuit against Meta for failing to take basic precautionary measures to ensure that children are safe on the platform. Shortly after that lawsuit was filed, our undercover agents began to receive communications from Mr. Kellywood. One of the things that I know has been a question in the past, and I want to make absolutely clear here today, at no time did the undercover agents who were posing as children on these social media platforms, did they initiate any conversation about sexual contact. In fact, it was entirely due to the interest that was exhibited by these defendants. And I would also demonstrate and make very plain for all of you that these are individuals who explicitly use this platform to find and target these children. It's extraordinarily concerning to us just how easily these individuals found the undercover personas that were created. And it is, frankly, I think, a wake-up call for all of us to understand just how serious these kinds of threats are. And the kind of practices that are currently allowed to exist on the Meta platform is something that I think these cases should draw new attention to. During the course of the investigation, We also identified an individual by the name of Christopher Reynolds. Now, Mr. Reynolds is slightly different than the other two defendants in this case because we actually received from a partner in Chaves County, New Mexico, a referral from concerned parents that their daughter had been targeted by Mr. Reynolds, who is a registered sex offender out of the state of Texas. After raising their concerns to the Chaves County Sheriff's Department, Chaves County contacted our office and its special agents. We created a decoy account for use in connection with our investigation into Mr. Reynolds' activities, and we actually took Mr. Reynolds into custody several weeks ago. He is charged with one count of child solicitation by electronic communication device. In each instance, the individuals who have been identified in the course of this operation were able to find and locate these children through the design features and the algorithm that's specifically set forth underneath these platforms that guides the connections that are made in each of these platforms. And I think it exhibits the extraordinary level of danger that everyone should understand exists in these spaces. Simply put, parents in this community and across the country, indeed around the world, should be acutely aware of the real-world harm, the real-world danger that exists in utilizing these platforms. To those who would use these platforms to target children in this community and in other communities, I want you to understand that our special agents and prosecutors will be continuing our investigative efforts in this regard. We'll be conducting ongoing operations to identify potential predators, and we will use every available tool to identify you, to apprehend you, and bring you to justice. And finally, for the executives at Meta, I think one thing needs to be said and taken away from this experience and Operation MetaPhile. If we take away nothing else, it's simply this. This is Mark Zuckerberg's fault. This is the fault of executives at a company that has extraordinary resources at its disposal and has chosen time and again to place profits over the interests of children. And for those of us who are engaged in this work, we are simply tired of the rhetoric. We are tired of the assurances that have been given to members of our communities, to members of Congress, to policymakers, that all reasonable steps have been taken to ensure that this type of behavior doesn't occur. Mark Zuckerberg is responsible for this. The Meta executives are responsible for this. And while we can do what we are able to as law enforcement professionals to try and safeguard the community, ultimately it is their responsibility to make sure that the products that they are putting out into the world are safe for everyone to use. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Anybody in the room with questions? Colleen?
Where does your lawsuit stand right now? Can you introduce this formally as evidence?
So the lawsuit is still in its early phases. There, I believe a motion to dismiss has been filed by the defendants in that case, who are once again hoping that Section 230, which was a law that was passed, I believe, in 1997, and granted a broad immunity shield to social media and tech companies, they are hoping that that will shield them from liability in that case. This particular investigation, Operation MetaPhile, is focused on identifying real-life predators, and we will be focused on those efforts. And so while there's no intention at this point to bring those allegations into that specific case, it's too early to tell to see what bearing it will have on that pending civil litigation. What I can say is that one of the things that we have asked for in the course of filing that lawsuit are the implementation of common sense safety measures. Things like real verifiable age verification to ensure that children aren't in these platforms. The other is a prohibition against direct communications with minor children, with underage users. Not every social media company in the world actually permits direct communication between underage users and unknown adults, but Meta is an exception. And I think it is clear what kind of harm that presents in the real world.
Since you guys have conducted this investigation and with Meta owning and operating those social media platforms like WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, have they said anything since you guys have filed this lawsuit? Has there been any response from them?
The basic response that we have from Meta, and it's reiterated in a lot of different contexts, is that they are taking reasonable steps to try and prevent this kind of behavior, this kind of activity from occurring on the platform. What I can tell you from our experience at the ground level, from the experience of our undercover agents, is that right now today, we could set up a brand new undercover account presented as an underage child on that platform, and likely within a matter of minutes, if not days, that child would be inundated with sexually explicit material. And so from my perspective, I'm less interested in broad public statements about the steps that the company has been making, and more interested in the actual actions that have been taken by the company and its executives.
In regards to the 3 people that have been apprehended up to this point, is there work or anything that you can say that there are still more, that there's more now that you guys know of that are still out there?
So I can't comment on any pending investigations, but I will say that our agents and our entire criminal division will be focused on identifying additional potential targets, people who are utilizing these platforms. And as those operations come to fruition, we'll be making more public statements about those at this time.
Hi, Luisa Polaca with Telemundo. So with this, if it were to shut down Meta, would you think the predators would move to another site, and would you guys target that site as well?
The commitment that we have at the Department of Justice is to do everything in our power to make sure that businesses are conducting themselves in a way that places the safety of every member of the community first. And I think that's just a basic expectation that we all have for anyone who is engaged in this kind of work. And so while we are focused on Meta at this point, because we believe they're the largest online platform for pedophiles and sexual predators, we're certainly not limiting our inquiry or our interest in this kind of work to that company alone. But right now, our focus is on Meta. Our focus is on the way in which their algorithms and their specific business features enable connections like this. One of the things that we are extremely troubled about is how quickly these individuals were able to identify these specific underage accounts. And for those of you who are actively participating in Facebook or any of these social media platforms, what you may not fully understand is how those connections are actually facilitated, right? How is someone referred to you as a potential friend or a potential contact that you want to make in a social media platform? It's our contention and belief that the platform itself is built in such a way that it links people by specific types of shared interests or characteristics that are of interest to a particular person. But what is deeply troubling about this operation and what it revealed is that the characteristics that these individuals are interested in is vulnerable children who could be sexually exploited and targeted.
Just for clarification, was this something done here in Albuquerque or all of New Mexico?
So this operation was conducted over the last several months, as I said before, in coordination with local law enforcement partners. We worked closely with the Chaves County Sheriff's Department. I also want to thank the McKinley County Sheriff's Department for supporting our agents yesterday as we took these 2 individuals into custody. It's the kind of collaboration that we will continue to pursue as we initiate these investigations in the future, and we are working with all of our local law enforcement partners to make sure that we have every available resource to continue this in the future.
Any other questions in person? No? Okay, we'll go to the Zoom if there's anyone who's raised their hand who wants to ask a question. Perfect, thank you.
So in conclusion, I want to make sure that members of the community understand that we're not just focused on apprehension and prosecution. We want you to know that there are resources available for you. And what we've done here, and I would appreciate members of the media sharing this information. Number one, if you have a potential tip, if you are concerned that someone you know, that a child you know may be in danger or may have received a solicitation like this, there's a direct link on the website listed here where individuals, teachers, parents, and others can make a formal referral of that potential predator, and we will initiate an investigation. Second, and I think this is a really important aspect for community partners, again, for parents and teachers, we have a social media guide. And by following the link below, you can actually go onto our website and walk through a process about engaging in a conversation with a young person, with a child, and walk through not only the dangers, but then have an explicit and detailed guide on how to change the safety settings on these devices, on the types of things that you should be mindful of, how to navigate these systems as safely and as effectively as you can. But the bottom line is, at this point, these are not safe spaces for children. These are not places where we, quite frankly, think anyone who's underage should be left unattended. And again, as I said at the beginning, the danger here doesn't just exist online, it exists in the real world, and everyone needs to be mindful of that as we move forward. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your attention.